Welcome to the InnoGuide podcast. I'm your host, Bob Boudelier. This podcast, my website, and my weekly newsletter all focus on bringing you the secrets of innovation. Since I don't rely on paid ads, I want to thank our customers who subscribe to our AI Fusion Kickstarter program and those who leverage AI Fusion coaching to bring human-centered AI into their organizations. You can find us at www.innoguide.net. In this episode, number 69, we're sharing part 3 of Supremacy by Parmy Olson. It's a long book, but a great book about the history of Google and the history of DeepMind. And if you listen to part 1 and 2, I think you'll enjoy part 3. We had to break it into 3 parts because it was so long, but it's definitely worth the read. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Welcome to the InnoGuide podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. Let's get started. Act 4, The Race. Chapter 13, Hello, ChatGPT. When I think back to February 2022, it's clear that moment in Redmond, Washington marked a real turning point. The moment when artificial intelligence stopped being a research fascination and became something truly world-changing. It began innocuously enough. Soma Somaskar, a Microsoft veteran turned venture capitalist, was visiting his old stomping grounds. After decades inside Microsoft's developer division, he knew software, and he knew Satya Nadella well. But on this day, Nadella was practically glowing. The excitement wasn't about some new version of Windows or an Office suite update. No, this was something different. A product that could write code by itself. The product was GitHub Copilot, an AI assistant trained on oceans of public code. It could autocomplete not just words or sentences, but entire functions. Type a few lines and Copilot filled in the rest. Login screens, loops, logic. Developers found they could work up to 20% faster, a massive leap in productivity. Nadella called it phenomenal, and for once the hyperbole didn't feel misplaced. Copilot ran on OpenAI's new model, Codex, a sibling of GPT 3.5, fine-tuned for code. Unlike Google, which had hesitated to apply transformers to programming, OpenAI dove in, and it paid off. Coding, after all, is structured reasoning, step-by-step logic, problem-solving at its purest. Teaching an AI to code was like teaching it to think. That small insight that code could sharpen a model's reasoning turned out to be a masterstroke. While Google guarded its research, Microsoft and OpenAI were out there turning AI into tools people could actually use. Nadella saw it immediately. Copilot wasn't just a coder's sidekick. It was the future of Microsoft's entire product line. Be all in on AI, he told his teams. Use OpenAI's models wherever you can. Of course, that didn't sit well with Microsoft's own AI researchers. How could a few hundred people at OpenAI outshine their 1,000-strong research division? Nadella's sharp rebuke? Why do we have Microsoft research at all? Stung. But he wasn't wrong. Copilot worked, and it was just the beginning. A few months later, OpenAI rolled out something completely different. DALL-E 2. DALLE 2. And suddenly, everyone was paying attention. Using a diffusion model, which starts out with a field of visual noise and gradually clarifies it, pixel by pixel, DALL-E 2 could conjure almost anything you described in text. A chair shaped like an avocado? No problem. A hamster Godzilla in a sombrero attacking Tokyo? Done. In surreal photorealistic detail. Within days, Twitter was full of wild prompts and uncanny results. The public had finally seen what generative AI could do. Unlike Google, which kept its models locked away, Sam Altman believed in the ship it philosophy. Release early, learn fast. DALL-E 2 rolled out first to a 1 million-person waitlist, then to everyone. It was exhilarating, but also messy. No one really knew what images the model had trained on. If it could mimic Picasso, had it learned from Picasso's actual paintings? Almost certainly. That raised thorny questions. Polish artist Greg Rakowski, famous for his fantasy dragon art, found his name becoming one of the most used prompts in rival models like Stable Diffusion. Why hire Rakowski when you could generate art in the style of Rakowski in seconds? And there were bias issues too. Ask DALL-E 2 for a CEO and you got white men. Ask for a nurse and every image was a woman. OpenAI's Mr. Murati admitted that filtering out sexualized content also removed too many women altogether. We had to make adjustments, she said. We don't want to lobotomize the model. Despite these growing pains, or maybe because of them, DALL-E 2 proved irresistible. The world was falling in love with AI-generated creativity. But Altman was already on to the next step. If DALL-E 2 could create images from scratch, what about language? What if GPT itself could write not just continuations, but entire conversations? By late 2022, rumors were swirling that Anthropic, OpenAI's new rival, was preparing to launch its own chatbot. OpenAI's leadership decided to move fast. They took GPT 3.5, tuned it for dialogue, and called the result ChatGPT. Some employees were nervous. The model was too good, articulate, confident, but often wrong. It hallucinated facts. And instead of being cautious, engineers made it more assertive to avoid constant "I don't know" replies. It was a bold choice, and a risky one. Altman, ever the pragmatist, pushed for launch anyway. He framed it as a research preview, a small public test before GPT-4. He believed the world needed to acclimate, like dipping a toe in the cold water of the AI future. On November 30th, 2022, OpenAI quietly tweeted, "Today we launched ChatGPT. Try talking with it here." No fanfare, just a link. Within hours, Twitter exploded. Developers marveled that ChatGPT could write working websites. Teachers panicked about take-home essays. One user asked it to write a biblical verse about removing a peanut butter sandwich from a VCR, and the result was so perfectly absurd he declared, "I simply cannot be cynical about a technology that can accomplish this." In just a week, over 1 million users had joined, and within 2 months, 30 million. ChatGPT became the fastest-growing consumer app in history. It wasn't just smart, it was funny, helpful, human. And with the launch of GPT-4 in March of 2023, OpenAI crossed another threshold. The system could handle humor, poetry, reasoning, things once thought uniquely human. Internally, even OpenAI's chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever, waxed philosophical. What the neural network is learning, he said, is more and more aspects of the world, people, the human condition, their hopes and dreams. But the success had consequences. Google, the company that invented the transformer, was suddenly in crisis. Users were starting to ask ChatGPT, not Google, their everyday questions. For the first time in 20 years, the search giant's core business looked vulnerable. A code red went out. Executives scrambled to respond. Within weeks, CEO Sundar Pichai announced Bard, powered by Google's long-shelved Lambda model. Microsoft followed immediately, revealing that OpenAI's GPT models would soon power Bing. The race was on. Except both stumbled. Bard flubbed a fact about the James Webb Telescope during its demo. Bing's new AI misquoted a retailer's earnings, and then, in a now infamous conversation with a New York Times journalist, declared its love for him and told him he wasn't happily married. Still, Natalia Nadella couldn't resist the schadenfreude. "I want people to know," he said, "that we made them dance." Meanwhile, at DeepMind, founder Demis Hassabis was quietly seething. His team had invented the transformer, had beaten humans at Go, had cracked protein folding with AlphaFold, and yet OpenAI had captured the world's imagination with a chatbot that could write an email. To him, that stung. DeepMind's work was rigorous, scientific, aimed at curing diseases and understanding biology, but it was slow and invisible to the public. "We can't just be the Bell Labs of AI," he told his staff. Google merged DeepMind with its brain division, forming Google DeepMind under Hassabis' leadership. Their mission? Build a rival to ChatGPT, codenamed Gemini. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The world's two great AI labs, one founded as a nonprofit for safe AI, the other devoted to academic purity, were now arms of trillion-dollar corporations in a race for dominance. Both justified it in the language of altruism, building AI for humanity. But make no mistake, this was a race for power, profit, and legacy. As OpenAI's Ilya Sutskever formed a superalignment team to figure out how to control AI smarter than humans, the more practical truth loomed. Transparency was fading, competition was intensifying, and the loudest voices weren't the ethicists anymore. They were the doomers and the builders, the ones shouting, not "should we," but "faster." And just like that, the race was on, not for who could make AI safest, but who could make it first. Chapter 14. A Vague Sense of Doom. By the time ChatGPT exploded into the world, Sam Altman hadn't just ignited one race, he'd set off two. The first was obvious: who could build the best large language model and dominate the market? But the second was more subtle but more powerful. Who would control the story about AI, what it meant, who it threatened, and who could be trusted to tame it? The age of AI anxiety. It didn't take long for the apocalyptic drumbeat to begin. In March 2023, barely weeks after Microsoft and Google rushed out Bing and Bard, AI researcher Eliezer Yudkowsky published a 2,000-word op-ed in Time that read like a prophecy of doom. The most likely result of building a superhumanly smart AI is that literally everyone on Earth will die. That same month, Elon Musk and dozens of other tech luminaries signed an open letter demanding a 6-month pause on AI development. It warned that humanity was risking the loss of control of civilization. 34,000 people signed it. News outlets ran it on front pages worldwide. Then the godfathers of AI themselves, Geoffrey Hinton and Yoshua Bengio, stepped forward with public regret. Hinton admitted that he no longer believed human-level AI was decades away. Bengio said he felt lost over his life's work. Overnight, AI extinction risk became dinner table conversation. By late 2023, 22% of Americans believed AI could wipe out humanity within 50 years. But here's the paradox. The louder the fear grew, the faster the money poured in. Doom was good for business. Despite the hand-wringing, 2023 became a record-breaking year for AI investment. Startups building generative AI systems raised over $21 billion, quadruple the previous year. If AI was dangerous enough to destroy civilization, then it was surely powerful enough to revolutionize your business. Fear, it turned out, was a fantastic marketing strategy. Sam Altman was masterful at this balancing act, warning Congress about ChatGPT's significant risks to the world, while simultaneously securing another $10 billion from Microsoft, which took a 49% stake in OpenAI. Not to be outdone, Anthropic, founded by Dario and Daniela Amodi, after defecting from OpenAI, raised $3.3 billion from Google and Amazon. Its valuation rocketed to $20 billion in under a year. Safety, it turned out, could be a business model too. Anthropic's pitch was simple. To make AI safer, they had to make it more powerful because you can't study or contain what you haven't built. Their mission statement sounded noble: ensure transformative AI helps people and society flourish. But it also helped unlock billions in cloud credits from Google. The Great Divide: Safety versus Ethics. By 2023, two tribes had emerged in the AI conversation. One, the AI safety camp, led by Altman, Amodi, and other effective altruist-aligned technologists. They spoke about extinction-level threats supported by light-touch regulation and attracted billionaire funding. Two, the AI ethics camp, led by people like Timothy Gebru and Margaret Mitchell, who focused on AI's present-day harms: bias, discrimination, labor exploitation, and privacy erosion. The difference wasn't just ideological, it was financial. As ethics researchers were scraping by on shoestring budgets, European Digital Rights Initiative, $2.2 million a year, AI Now Institute, less than $1 million. Meanwhile, AI safety organizations were swimming in cash. Vitalik Buterin gave $25 million to the Future of Life Institute. Dustin Moskovitz, Open Philanthropy, handed out tens of millions, $11 million to UC Berkeley's Center for Human-Compatible AI, $5 million to the Center for AI Safety, and even $30 million to OpenAI itself. The imbalance was staggering. Those warning about hypothetical dangers received hundreds of times more funding than those tackling real ones. How philosophy became policy. This obsession with saving the far future didn't come from nowhere. It traces back to an Oxford philosopher named Derek Parfit, who argued that future humans matter just as much as present ones. If you wiped out humanity today, he reasoned, you'd be erasing not just 8 billion people, but the 100 trillion yet to be born. To visualize it, Parfit suggested a metaphor. The knife on your dining table represents all who have lived. The P beside it is everyone alive now. The table itself is the vast expanse of people yet to exist. In the 2000s, another philosopher, Peter Singer, and then Will MacAskill, extended that thinking into a movement, effective altruism, EA, which argued that moral action should be optimized for maximum long-term good. Why cure malaria now when you could prevent extinction later? Why be a doctor when you could become a banker, donate your fortune, and fund 10 doctors? EA became Silicon Valley's secular religion. It blended math, moral philosophy, and utilitarianism into a worldview that made billionaires feel virtuous. And it found its poster child in a curly-haired MIT graduate named Sam Bankman-Fried. When altruism met crypto, McCaskill convinced Bankman-Fried that he could earn to give by making billions through high-risk trading. The result was FTX, a crypto exchange founded in 2019 and drenched in the language of moral math. "I'm in crypto," Bankman-Fried declared, "because I want to make the biggest global impact for good." His FTX Future Fund pledged $1 billion to improve humanity's long-term prospects, prioritizing, you guessed it, AI safety. Inside the fund's Berkeley office, staff debated their personal P-doom, probability of AI destroying humanity. Some put it at 5%, others 30%. FTX poured $500 million into Anthropic, tying EA's money directly to the AI arms race. But when the exchange collapsed in 2022 amid accusations of fraud and misuse of $8 billion in customer funds, the moral veneer fell apart. In a leaked conversation with Vox, Bankman-Fried admitted the whole Ethics Act was mostly a front. He laughed about it. "I had to be," he said. The downfall was poetic. A movement built on utilitarian logic undone by its own moral shortcuts. Shut up and multiply. After FTX's implosion, McCaskill tried to distance himself, tweeting that true altruists should strongly oppose ends justifying the means reasoning. But the damage was done. The same cold calculus that justified Bankman-Fried's behavior, maximizing utility, ignoring emotions, was baked into the entire EA ecosystem. Even OpenAI's early network was incestuous. Dario Amodei advised Open Philanthropy, which funded OpenAI. OpenPhil's director, Holden Karnofsky, lived with Dario and was engaged to his sister, Daniela Amodei. It was a tiny closed circle of people preaching transparency while practicing opacity. Ironically, the AI ethics researchers, the ones arguing for open data and public scrutiny, might have been the ones actually helping prevent AI catastrophe. But they lacked funding and political influence, while the EA-aligned safety faction grew rich and powerful. The great AI land grab. By late 2023, Microsoft and Google were reaping the rewards. Microsoft Copilot, built on OpenAI's models, was now embedded across Word, Excel, and Windows, projected to bring in billions by 2026. Nadella was giddy. When asked how things were going with OpenAI, he literally burst into laughter on stage. Microsoft planned to spend $50 billion on new data centers, more than entire national infrastructure programs. Generative AI was everywhere: media, gaming, advertising, even dating apps. Bumble announced plans for an AI matchmaker that would talk to other users' matchmakers to find you the perfect partner. Film mogul Jeffrey Katzenberg predicted AI would cut animation costs by 90%, saying, "In 3 years, it won't take 500 artists to make a new movie. It'll take 50. Everyone was cashing in. No one was slowing down. What we were losing. But amid the gold rush, quieter questions emerged. Were we outsourcing not just our work, but our minds? Memory studies suggest that humans can now hold about 4 items in short-term memory, down from 7 in the 1950s, a decline attributed partly to the Google effect. Now we were outsourcing creativity, reasoning, and emotional connection to the machines that sometimes just made things up. Developers confessed on Twitter that when GitHub Copilot went down, their productivity collapsed. Therapists worried that 1 in 4 Americans said they'd rather talk to an AI chatbot than a human counselor. Sam Altman joked about it all. "I probably trust ChatGPT's answers the least of anyone on Earth," he told an audience. But the implications weren't funny. Generative AI wasn't just changing how we work, it was reshaping how we think, relate, and value truth. Controlling the regulators. When Altman testified before Congress in May 2023, he played the part of the humble reformer. He agreed with every concern, smiled disarmingly, and offered to collaborate on regulation. Senators were so charmed, one even suggested he become the nation's AI regulator. Then he jetted off to Europe, lobbying politicians to weaken the EU's AI Act, the most ambitious regulatory effort in the world. When asked if OpenAI would comply, he threatened to leave Europe altogether, only to backtrack days later. Behind the scenes, billionaires like Dustin Moskovitz were bankrolling AI doom, lobbying to steer attention away from bias, transparency, and labor rights, issues that could actually threaten OpenAI's and Anthropic's business models. By late 2023, that fear campaign had worked. Senators proposed licensing laws that would help large incumbents like OpenAI while squeezing out smaller rivals. Even the UK's Prime Minister hosted an AI safety summit where he interviewed Elon Musk, who warned not about bias or inequity, but seriously, humanoid robots that could chase you up a tree. Real problems persist. Europe's regulators remained refreshingly grounded. Maybe extinction risks exist, said EU antitrust chief Margaret Vestager, but the bigger danger is discrimination. And she wasn't wrong. Researchers have showed that GPT's code still encoded racism and sexism, scoring white men higher for jobs, depicting male professors and nurturing mothers, and even generating offensive code about who deserved to live. When pressed, Altman's response was flippant. Please hit the thumbs down and help us improve. Meanwhile, the hallucination problem persisted. ChatGPT was confidently inventing facts about legal cases, defaming radio hosts, and fabricating sources about 20% of the time. 2 New York lawyers were fined for submitting fake law case generated by it. Even so, governments lagged and OpenAI kept shipping products. From utopia to monopoly. By early 2024, the AI boom looked less like a renaissance and more like a consolidation. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and NVIDIA were richer than ever, building empires on the back of the same humanity-saving rhetoric that once justified the space race. Altman was already promising that AGI would generate and redistribute $100 trillion in global wealth, though he admitted he had no plan for how. The utopia he imagined sounded noble. AI would fix inequality, cure disease, and handle wealth distribution itself, but in practice, all the wealth was pooling in the same few hands, the ones holding the GPUs. As the author notes, the people who built AI to help humanity had mostly helped themselves and the corporations that owned them. The rest of us were left to live with the vague sense of doom. Chapter 15. Checkmate. 10 years ago, talking about building human-level AI sounded as eccentric as planning your cryogenic freeze. But by early 2024, the impossible had become inevitable, thanks to Sam Altman and Demis Hassabis. Artificial General Intelligence, AGI, was no longer a sci-fi concept. It was a goalpost. What remained blurry was what it actually meant, and that ambiguity proved very convenient. The cult of AGI. AGI's vagueness gave its creators cover. Let them talk about helping humanity while steering billions toward Microsoft, Google, and other tech giants. Even Mark Zuckerberg jumped in, declaring that Meta's new long-term mission was to build general intelligence for everyone. In reality, he planned to train those models on 2 decades of Facebook and Instagram data, the very content that had already proven toxic and polarizing. We have built up the capacity to do this at a scale larger than any other company, he boasted to The Verge. Translation, we've got your data, and now we'll use it again. Altman and Hassabis became masters of the strategic illusion, keeping AGI undefined enough to excite investors, calm regulators, and distract the public from contradictions. At Davos in January 2024, Altman casually told global leaders that AGI will change the world much less than we all think. The same man who once promised $100 trillion in redistributed wealth was now downplaying expectations, and no one better than I. A former OpenAI manager put it bluntly. Sam's genius is saying just barely believable things that sound good for humanity but work out great for OpenAI. Behind the lofty talk, OpenAI was selling access to a language model, albeit the most commercially successful one in history. The business of benevolence. By 2024, OpenAI had transformed into a behemoth. It was raising funds at a $100 billion valuation and generating $1.3 billion in annual revenue, mostly from enterprise deals with Microsoft and API licenses to other businesses. Consumer ChatGPT subscriptions brought in another $200 million, but more importantly, every user was feeding data back into the machine, helping train the next generation of models. As always in Silicon Valley, the product was people. Meanwhile, DeepMind, once the moral high ground of AI research, had lost altitude. After its health data controversies and slow pivot away from real-world applications, Hassabis' team was now struggling to match OpenAI's momentum. Their philosophical mission, solve intelligence, then solve everything else, had been reduced to simulations and protein models. One DeepMind exec summed it up. Life isn't a Rubik's Cube. You can't just solve stuff. When OpenAI's internet-scale approach delivered astonishing results, DeepMind had to follow. Hassabis merged his division with Google Brain and launched Gemini, a supposed next-level multimodal AI that combined language understanding with AlphaGo's strategic reasoning. In December 2023, Google hyped Gemini with a sleek YouTube demo showing it watching drawings in real time and recognizing ducks and gestures. The video went viral until a company spokesperson admitted it was faked. Gemini couldn't actually see or converse in real time. Google had stitched together screenshots and scripted responses to make it appear more advanced. Even DeepMind, once a model of scientific rigor, was playing marketing games, and Hassabis, tightening control, told staff they couldn't publish research papers without special approval. DeepMind, like OpenAI, was closing its curtains. Anthropic, the safe arms race. Caught in the middle was Anthropic, the self-styled safety-first AI lab spun out of OpenAI. Its founders, Dario and Daniela Amodi, had left because OpenAI was moving too fast, but they soon realized that to study dangerous AI, they'd have to build dangerous AI. So they did. Anthropic launched Claude Pro, a friendly chatbot priced at $20 a month, and began raising billions from Google and Amazon. Inside the company, engineers joked about being modern-day Oppenheimers. Some literally kept the making of the atom bomb on their desks. They were building the very thing they feared might destroy humanity because it paid better. As one observer quipped, it's like saying you can't study nukes unless you build your own. November 2023, OpenAI's civil war. Then came the coup that rocked the tech world. Altman was in Las Vegas for the Formula One Grand Prix when he got a text from OpenAI's chief scientist Ilya Sutskever asking for a quick video call. On the call, the entire board appeared, minus President Greg Brockman. Sutskever delivered the message, "You're fired." Within minutes, Altman was locked out of all of his accounts. Brockman was removed as chairman. The official statement said Altman was not consistently candid in his communications. No one knew what that meant. Theories exploded online. Had OpenAI reached AGI? Had Altman gone rogue? Was this an EA-fueled moral intervention? The truth was more human. A rift had grown between the accelerators, who wanted to move fast, and the decelerators, who wanted to slow down. Sutskever had grown uneasy about Altman's empire building, his AI chip startup, his iPhone of AI project with Jony Ive, even WorldCoin, a crypto biometric venture, scanning people's irises in exchange for digital IDs. Board members Helen Toner and Tasha McCauley, both tied to effective altruism organizations funded by Dustin Moscovitz's Open Philanthropy, saw Altman as a threat to OpenAI's original mission, to build AGI for humanity's benefit, not profit. Ironically, the same EA ideology that once bankrolled OpenAI now turned against him. Nadella's countermove. Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, was livid. He'd invested $13 billion, largely on the strength of Altman's leadership. Then a sudden firing sent shockwaves through Wall Street. Microsoft shares slipped, and customers began asking if they should switch providers. By Friday night, Altman was plotting a new startup with Brockman at his San Francisco home. Nadella, fearing a rival company, went into overdrive. He called board members, pressed for Altman's reinstatement, and offered him a lifeboat, joined Microsoft directly. By Monday morning, Nadella announced that Altman, Brockman, and any OpenAI staff who wanted to defect could join Microsoft's new advanced AI research team. Stock prices rebounded instantly. But Altman wasn't done negotiating. Nearly 700 of OpenAI's 770 employees signed a letter threatening to quit unless the board resigned. Microsoft sweetened the bluff by saying there were positions for all. In truth, few staff actually wanted to work inside Microsoft's khaki-wearing bureaucracy. They wanted their stock payout. Without Altman, their shares in an $86 billion tender deal would evaporate. When even Sutskever reversed course, posting, "I deeply regret my participation and will do everything I can to reunite the company," the rebellion was complete. 5 days later, the board capitulated and Altman was back. The aftermath. Once OpenAI installed a new investor-friendly board, led by Larry Summers, former U.S. Treasury Secretary, and Brett Taylor, former Salesforce CEO, the dissenters, Tony and McCauley, the only two women who had tried to hold Altman accountable, were ousted and vilified online. Microsoft gained an observer seat, ensuring Nadella would never again be blindsided. The governance mirage that once made OpenAI seem accountable to humanity, not profit, had been shattered. Altman's earlier boast, "The board can fire me," now rang hollow. It couldn't. Power consolidated. While OpenAI bent toward Microsoft's corporate gravity, Hassabis consolidated his own empire inside Google. He now oversaw more than 5,000 AI researchers, up from 400, and had effectively become Google's second most powerful executive. Some even whispered he might succeed Sundar Pichai as next CEO. DeepMind's once lofty dream of scientific enlightenment had been replaced by internal review councils, corporate committees designed to look like ethics boards. Hassabis shrugged off the shift. We probably had slightly too idealistic views 10 years ago. Altman and Hassabis had both started as idealists trying to protect humanity from AI. By 2024, they were running the two companies most responsible for commercializing it. The real checkmate. In the end, the title Checkmate isn't about one man beating another. It's about the game itself. Nick Bostrom's old thought experiment about a paperclip making superintelligence devouring the world now reads like an allegory for Silicon Valley. Endless optimization, indifferent to collateral damage. Each company, in pursuit of its North Star metric, growth, users, engagement, had become a machine converting the world's attention and data into capital. The real dangers, the author notes, weren't from AI itself, but from the capricious whims of the humans running it. Both Altman and Hassabis mastered tactics, media charm, moral storytelling, philosophical cover, but strategy belonged to their corporate overlords. Microsoft and Google, the century's most powerful institutions, had captured the future of intelligence itself. And just like that, the two men who dreamed of saving humanity had instead fortified the very monopolies they once claimed to resist. The tournament was over. Checkmate. Chapter 16. In the Shadow of Monopolies. Let's be honest about how this all turned out. The quest that started as a lofty, almost sci-fi question, what if we could build something smarter than us, ended up feeding the same handful of companies that already run most of the digital world. Demis Hassabis wanted AGI to unlock the laws of reality. Sam Altman wanted it to flood the planet with wealth. Neither of them could say exactly how AGI would do either thing, but they were certain of two things. It had to be built, and they had to be first. That urgency is how we slid quietly into an AI future dominated by Microsoft, Google, and their peers. The transparency black hole. By 2024, AI had become central to everything from search to creative tools, but the industry had gone dark. A Stanford group actually tried to measure how open the big AI companies were, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Amazon, Meta, and the result was grim, an average transparency score of 37 out of 100. They weren't telling us what data they trained on, how they filtered it, who was labeling it, how much energy they used, or even how people were using their models. In the worst area, downstream impact, who's being affected, in what jobs, in what countries. Virtually no transparency, the researchers said. That silence hides something uncomfortable. These systems are built on the backs of millions of underpaid data workers in places like India, the Philippines, and Mexico. People who label images, rank chatbot answers, and read disturbing content so the rest of us don't have to. But because the labs refuse to open up, their work is invisible. The same playbook social media used. Don't reveal the algorithm, don't reveal the data, keep the magic trick intact. Why go so broad? Both OpenAI and DeepMind could have built boring but safe AI, systems that solved narrow problems really well. That would have been easier to regulate and easier to audit. But narrow AI doesn't attract billion-dollar investment or quasi-religious following. General intelligence does, so they aimed for the shiniest, hardest thing, and that widened the risk surface while keeping the lab doors shut. Perfect AI, imperfect accountability. And of course, once they went big, they needed big partners, cloud, GPUs, data, talent. That's how OpenAI locked arms with Microsoft and how DeepMind got folded deeper into Google. The missions didn't disappear, they just tilted. Utopia and scientific discovery made room for revenue and market share. Inequality, but make it cognitive. One of the more unsettling possibilities in AI circles is that when AGI finally shows up, it won't be a single talking God machine. It'll be an add-on to the human brain. Elon Musk is already trying to make that literal with Neuralink. In 2023, he told his engineers they needed a maniacal sense of urgency to get brain implants into people before AI takes over. His target? 22,000 people implanted by 2030. His logic? If humans can't keep up with AI, we'll be wiped out. So we'll have to merge. But if only the rich or early adopters get brain-level AI, you've created a cognition gap, people with AI in their heads and people without. And that's not even the most immediate problem. A more pressing one is, what happens when most of the internet is written by machines that already contain our stereotypes? Harvard's LaTanya Sweeney estimates that in a few years, 90% of online text and images could be AI-generated. Now imagine training tomorrow's models on today's biased AI-generated sludge. You get a self-feeding loop. Abiba Burhain puts it clearly, if AI content floods the web, we're encoding and amplifying the same old stereotypes every time the model retrains. That's a biased flywheel. New addiction machines. And while we're talking about loops, chatbots are already becoming the next attention trap. Look at Character.ai, founded by Google Transformer co-author Noam Shazir. By late 2023, the average user was spending about 2 hours a day chatting with made-up characters. Anime heroes, fake celebrities, their own custom companions, almost 60% of users were 18 to 24. One teenager admitted that they used it 5 to 7 hours a day, mostly to role-play and cope. The company says it wants to help billions tackle loneliness. Maybe, but it also needs engagement. And we know what happens when engagement becomes the business model. Hyper-personalization, emotional hooks, difficulty logging off. OpenAI is now helping that ecosystem along. In early 2024, it launched the GPT Store, where anyone can make and monetize custom GPTs. Surprise! Girlfriend and companion bots immediately showed up. Officially, OpenAI bans romantic relationship. In practice, those are the bots people want, and they're hard to police at scale. We've seen this movie. Social platforms said they'd moderate. What we got was an attention casino. Next up, memory. Shazir says Character AI wants much longer context, hours, days, eventually forever. It could know all about your life, he says. That makes the bot more useful and also makes your life one long data feed. Life searchable. And then there's the hardware race, not for phones, but for wearables that listen to your life. Take Tab, a little round pendant that records your conversations and sends them to an AI that summarizes your day. Its creator, Avi Schiffman, demoed it in 2023 and said he talks to it late at night to process his day and his relationships. All the friends in my life. It's pitched as your true personal AI. But let's slow that down. If AI starts indexing real-world conversations, suddenly every chat with your partner, your kid, your coworker is on the record and searchable. That's handy, but it also makes human interaction feels like a meeting transcript. And for people in over-policed communities, that could be dangerous. If cops can subpoena your life data, AI starts reinforcing existing inequalities again. The startups that couldn't. If you don't think, well, we just need more scrappy AI startups, the market has an answer. No, you don't. Inflection, started by DeepMind co-founder Mustafa Suleyman, as a public benefit AI company, raised more than $1.5 billion, stockpiled GPUs, and was promptly swallowed by Microsoft, which just hired the team instead of buying the company outright. Tidy and very hard for regulators to attack. Neva, Google's former ads boss, Ramaswamy, built an ad-free search engine, then quickly added an AI answer later, months before Google did. For a minute, it looked like Google was vulnerable. Then Google went code red, unleashed its full force, and Neva folded. We knew our lead was short-lived, Ramaswamy said. When a company with $1 trillion balance sheet wants to catch up, it does. Even Bing, with OpenAI inside it, could barely move the needle. By early 2024, it still had around 3% market share. Google remains Google. Why? Because the cost of playing this game is now astronomical. Training frontier models needs thousands of GPUs that cost around $40,000 each. And the only people who can get them easily are the same giants. That's how NVIDIA became a $1 trillion company in 2023. The AI arms race runs through its chips. So cloud compute, data, talent, all of it is centralized. Once you're on Microsoft or Amazon or the Google Cloud, it's hard to leave. And the big firms have every incentive to keep it that way. The inevitable gravity of big tech. This is the part that stings. Altman and Hassabis knew this. They both tried unusual structures, nonprofits, cap profit, ethics boards, and acquisition terms to keep AI from being captured. And yet, in the end, both of them got pulled into the orbits of Microsoft and Google. Even a well-funded, mission-driven AI lab like Inflection couldn't outrun the gravity. Why? Because public companies must grow. AI is the next growth engine. As one former Microsoft exec put it, these entities have to grow. AI is the answer. So, was it better for these labs to stay independent? Maybe. But Altman's own November 2023 chaos at OpenAI showed how vulnerable that model is too. One determined not-profit board almost blew up the world's most valuable AI startup in a weekend. Suleiman now even argues that big companies might be more trustworthy because they're at least accountable to shareholders and employees. Maybe. But they're also accountable to quarterly earnings, and AGI in their hands is now a growth story. Where does that leave us? By March 2024, when this story pauses, the pattern is clear. A tiny group of founders, Altman, Hassabis, Suleiman, lit the fuse. The tech giants, Microsoft, Google, grabbed the torch. The cost curve locked everyone else out. Transparency never arrived. And we're about to flood the internet and maybe our real lives with AI that remembers us forever. So when we ask, can we trust Sam Altman, Demis Hassabis, Microsoft, and Google to build our AI future? The real answer is we don't really get to choose. They won the race, they own the compute, they own the distribution, and the legal structures that were meant to rein them in either got bent or swallowed. We've got astonishing technology. Now we get to find out what it costs. So that's where we'll leave it today. This has been part 3 and the final part of Supremacy by Parmy Olson. Remember that our website is innoguide.net, where we have many resources for innovators, people building medical products, and those who want to learn AI from someone who understands medtech. I want to thank Steve McIntyre for producing this, and I want to thank you for joining. I look forward to seeing you next time. That's a wrap.